My name is Joshua Martinez. I am 21 years old, and 6 months ago, I left for Army basic training, believing I was starting a new life, building a future, becoming someone my family could be proud of. I survived 10 weeks of the toughest training the military could throw at me. I earned my uniform. I earned my rank. I had orders for advanced individual training and a guaranteed career path that would take me places I had never dreamed possible. But the day I came home to surprise my family, expecting smiles and celebrations, I walked through the door to find my 12-year-old sister, Emma, cooking dinner for 3 toddlers in a filthy, half-empty house with no parents in sight. That was the day I learned that while I had been becoming a soldier, my parents had abandoned my 4 younger siblings, leaving a child to raise children, and that I would have to choose between the future I had earned and the family that needed me. This is the story of how I gave up everything I had worked for to save my brothers and sisters, and how at 21 years old, I became a single father to 4 kids because the people who were supposed to protect them simply walked away. I grew up in Riverside, California, the oldest of 5 kids in a family that was always struggling but never quite broken. At least, that is what I thought. My father, Miguel Martinez, worked construction when he could find work, which was not always consistent. My mother, Jennifer Martinez, had been a waitress before my youngest brother was born 3 years ago, but she had not worked since then, saying she needed to stay home with the kids. Money was always tight. We lived in a small rental house, in a neighborhood where you heard sirens most nights and learned not to walk alone after dark. But we had each other, or so I believed. I was the oldest, 20 years old when I enlisted last March. Then there was Emma, 12 years old, and always more mature than her age suggested, the responsible one who helped with her younger siblings. Then came Sophia, 7, a bright, energetic little girl who loved drawing and was obsessed with unicorns. Then Marcus, 5, a shy kid who barely talked to anyone outside the family. And finally Daniel, 3 years old, still in diapers, always crying or laughing with no in-between. Growing up as the oldest in a struggling family meant I had responsibilities from a young age. I helped raise my siblings, changing diapers when my parents were too tired or too drunk or just not there. I learned to cook simple meals when I was 10 because otherwise the younger kids would not eat. I made sure Emma got to school when my parents overslept. I was the backup parent, the one who stepped in when the actual parents failed. By the time I was 18, I knew I had to get out, not because I did not love my siblings, but because I was drowning. I had graduated high school by the skin of my teeth while working 2 part-time jobs to help with bills. I had no money for college, no prospects beyond more minimum wage jobs in a town with no opportunities. The military seemed like my only chance at something better, a way to get training, education benefits, a career that could support me, and maybe eventually help support my family. I talked to an Army recruiter when I was 19, but my parents begged me not to enlist. "We need you here, Joshua," my mother said. "Who will help with the kids? Who will help with the bills?" So I stayed another year, working at a warehouse and living at home, watching my parents make the same mistakes over and over, spending money they did not have, fighting constantly, creating chaos that my siblings had to live through. Finally, when I turned 20, I made the decision. I was enlisting. I was leaving. I needed to build something for myself before I could help anyone else. My parents were angry, but resigned, probably because they knew they could not stop me. Emma cried, terrified of losing the one stable person in her life. The younger kids did not really understand what was happening, just that their big brother was going away. I left for basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia, in late March. The day I left, Emma cried so hard she made herself sick. She was terrified of losing the one stable person in her life, the one person who had consistently shown up for her and her siblings when our parents failed. I promised her I would call every chance I got, that I would come home on leave, that I was not abandoning her the way our parents had abandoned their responsibilities. But promises are easy to make and hard to keep when you are being remade into a soldier. The first few weeks of basic training were hell in the way everyone warns you about, but you cannot truly understand until you experience it. Physical training that pushed me to limits I did not know I had. Waking up at 4:30 in the morning to run miles before the sun came up, doing push-ups until my arms shook and gave out, only to be ordered to do more. Drill sergeants screaming in my face, inches away, spitting as they yelled about how I was the most pathetic excuse for a recruit they had ever seen, how I would never make it, how I should quit now and save everyone the trouble. Sleep deprivation that made everything feel surreal and dreamlike. We slept maybe 4 hours a night those first weeks, and never all at once. Someone was always on fire guard, watching for threats that never came, staying awake through sheer force of will. I learned to fall asleep standing up, to wake instantly at any sound, to function on exhaustion that would have incapacitated me before. The constant pressure, constant evaluation, constant judgment, every movement watched and critiqued, every mistake punished, with additional physical training, every moment of weakness or doubt exploited and amplified until you either broke or became stronger. I saw recruits quit, saw them cry, saw them get injured and recycled to start training over. I saw the drill sergeants systematically break down everything we thought we knew about ourselves and rebuild us as soldiers. But I thrived in it. For the first time in my life, I was responsible only for myself. I did not have to worry about whether my siblings had eaten dinner, or if my parents were fighting, or if there was enough money to keep the electricity on. I just had to focus on becoming a soldier, on passing the tests, on meeting the standards, on proving I belonged there. And I was good at it. I discovered I was physically stronger than I had given myself credit for. All those years of manual labor, of lifting toddlers and carrying groceries and doing construction work to help pay bills, had built a foundation of strength I had not recognized. I could run the required 2 miles in under 13 minutes, exceeding the standard. I could do 60 push-ups and 70 sit-ups without stopping. I could climb ropes and walls and obstacles that looked impossible. I discovered I could lead. When they made me a squad leader temporarily, responsible for 10 other recruits, I found I had a knack for motivating people and keeping them focused. Maybe it came from years of being the oldest sibling, the one who had to rally the younger kids and get them through difficult situations. Whatever the source, I was good at it. Good enough that my drill sergeants noticed and started giving me more responsibility. I discovered I could handle weapons. Marksmanship came naturally to me. Something about the focus and precision required clicking with how my brain worked. I qualified expert with the M16 rifle, hitting 40 out of 40 targets, one of only 3 people in my company to do so. My drill sergeant shook my hand after that qualification, the first positive feedback I had received from him in weeks, and said I had the potential to be an exceptional soldier. We were not allowed phone calls for the first 4 weeks. That was part of the process, separating us completely from our civilian lives so we could be transformed into something new. Those weeks were the longest of my life, not because of the training, but because I had no idea what was happening at home. Were my siblings okay? Was Emma managing school? Were my parents even still around? The not knowing ate at me, but there was nothing I could do except trust that everything would be fine until I could contact them. After week 4, we got limited phone privileges on Sundays. 10 minutes on a pay phone if there were not too many people waiting in line, which there always were. I called home. Every Sunday, I could manage to get to a phone, usually getting voicemail. When my mother did answer, the conversations were always brief and frustrating. Joshua, honey, how is the army treating you? It is tough, Mom, but I am doing okay. How are the kids? Can I talk to Emma? They are fine. Everyone is fine. Emma is at a friend's house right now. Sophia and Marcus are playing outside. Daniel is napping. Can you have Emma call me back? I really want to talk to her. Of course, sweetie. I will tell her. We miss you so much. We are all so proud of you. But Emma never called back. None of them did. As the weeks went by, my mother answered less and less frequently. By week 8, she had stopped answering my calls altogether. I would leave voicemails saying I loved them, asking them to call me back, telling them I would be home on leave soon. The messages were never returned. I tried not to worry. I told myself they were busy, that my mother was just bad about phones, even when I lived at home, that no news was good news. I focused on my training, on qualifying with my weapon, on passing my physical fitness tests, on learning infantry tactics and land navigation and first aid. I threw myself into becoming a soldier because it was easier than thinking about the silence from home. I graduated from basic training in early June, standing in formation in my dress uniform on the parade ground while family members watched and cheered. I looked for my family in the crowd, but did not really expect to see them. The drive from California to Georgia was expensive and long, and I knew my parents could not afford it and probably would not make the effort even if they could. I was one of the few recruits without anyone there to watch me graduate, to pin on my rank, to celebrate this achievement. But I was proud anyway. I had made it through 10 weeks of the hardest training the Army offered. I had proven I could do something difficult and see it through to the end. I had earned my uniform and my rank. I was Private Joshua Martinez, United States Army, and I had orders for advanced individual training where I would specialize in infantry operations. I had a career path, a future, something I had built for myself through hard work and determination. I had 2 weeks of leave before I had to report for AIT. Some of the other soldiers were flying home to see their families, but plane tickets were expensive, and I wanted to surprise mine anyway. I decided to take a bus, a 3-day journey that would give me plenty of time to imagine my homecoming. I spent those 3 days on buses that smelled like exhaust and old upholstery, watching America pass by through dirty windows. I changed buses in Atlanta, then Nashville, then Oklahoma City, then Phoenix, each layover longer than the last, each terminal filled with tired people going to places they probably did not want to go. I slept in bus stations with my duffel bag as a pillow, buying cheap food from vending machines, counting down the hours until I would see my siblings again. I thought about how I would walk through the door in my uniform. I thought about Emma's face when she saw me, the way she would probably cry and hug me and not let go. I thought about lifting Sophia and Marcus up and spinning them around the way I used to when I still lived at home. I thought about Daniel, who would be bigger now, maybe not even remembering me after 6 months apart, but warming up eventually. I had money saved from my military pay, about $1,500 after paying for the bus tickets. I planned to take everyone out to dinner to a nice restaurant where the kids could order whatever they wanted. I would buy them new clothes because they were growing and probably needed them. I would give my mother money to help with bills. I would be the success story, the son who left and made something of himself and came back to help his family. The fantasy of that homecoming sustained me through the long bus ride. It kept me from thinking about the unanswered phone calls, the months of silence, the nagging worry that something was wrong. I told myself everything would make sense when I got home. There would be reasonable explanations. My mother had lost her phone. They had been too busy to call. They had planned to surprise me at graduation, but could not make it work financially. Everything would be fine. I arrived in Riverside on a Thursday afternoon in mid-June, the California heat hitting me like a wall after months of Georgia's different kind of heat and humidity. The air smelled like exhaust and hot asphalt, and something floral from the oleander bushes that grew wild around the bus station. I caught a city bus from the station to my neighborhood, sitting in the back with my duffel bag, watching familiar streets pass by and feeling strange about being home after so long away. The house looked worse than I remembered. The front yard, which had never been well maintained, was completely overgrown with weeds and brown patches where the grass had died. There was trash scattered around, old newspapers and fast food bags, like nobody had bothered to pick anything up in months. The paint was peeling worse than before, and one of the front windows had a crack across it that had been covered with duct tape. But these were cosmetic things, I told myself. My parents had never been great about home maintenance. What was strange was the emptiness. No cars in the driveway. No sounds from inside. It was 3:30 in the afternoon, and if my mother was home with the kids, I should have heard something. Daniel crying, Marcus playing, the television on. But there was just silence. I used my key to let myself in, calling out as I entered. Mom, Dad, I am home. Surprise! My voice echoed through the house, unanswered. The living room was a disaster. Clothes were scattered everywhere. Dirty dishes piled on every surface. Toys broken and abandoned in corners. The couch had stains I did not want to identify. The TV was on but muted, playing some daytime talk show to an empty room. Mom. I called again, moving through the house. The kitchen was worse. Dishes overflowed from the sink, some with food crusted on them that looked weeks old. The garbage can was overflowing, trash piled around it, because nobody had taken it out. The fridge hummed loudly, and when I opened it, I found almost nothing inside. A half-empty gallon of milk that was past its expiration date, some condiments, a few eggs, 2 slices of cheese still in the wrapper. No real food. Nothing you could make a meal from. I felt the first stirring of real unease in my gut. Where was everyone? Had they gone out? But my mother did not have a car, and my father took the truck to work when he was working. How would they all have left? I climbed the stairs, my boots heavy on the worn carpet. My old room was empty, my bed stripped, my belongings packed away like I had never existed there. My parents' room was similarly abandoned, the bed unmade, clothes spilling out of drawers and closets, but no people. Then I heard it, a small sound from the kids' room at the end of the hall, singing soft and slightly off-key, a child's voice trying to soothe other children. I walked to the door and pushed it open. The scene I found there broke something inside me. Emma, my 12-year-old sister, was sitting on the floor surrounded by her younger siblings. She had Sophia on one side, Marcus on the other, and Daniel in her lap. She was singing a lullaby I vaguely remembered from childhood while trying to feed Daniel applesauce from a nearly empty jar. All 4 of them looked wrong, too thin, wearing clothes that were dirty and ill-fitting, hair that needed washing. Sophia had a rash on her arms. Marcus's eyes looked dull and listless. Daniel was whimpering, clearly hungry, but too exhausted to cry properly. Emma looked up when I entered, and the expression on her face went through a series of emotions so fast I could barely track them. Shock, her eyes going wide and her mouth falling open. Joy, a flash of pure happiness that transformed her exhausted face. Relief, so profound it was painful to witness, like she had been holding her breath for months and could finally exhale. And then fear, like she was terrified that I was not real, that I was a hallucination brought on by stress and hunger, or that I would disappear again and leave her alone. Joshua. Her voice was barely a whisper, cracked and hoarse like she had been crying for so long her voice had given out. Is that really you? Emma, what is going on? Where are Mom and Dad? The question broke something in her. She started crying, great heaving sobs that shook her whole thin body. She tried to talk through the tears but could not form words, just gasping sounds that spoke of months of fear and desperation finally being released. Sophia saw Emma crying and immediately burst into tears herself, her small face crumpling. Marcus curled into a ball beside them, his hands over his ears, rocking back and forth in a self-soothing motion that broke my heart. Daniel wailed in Emma's arms, picking up on the emotional chaos around him and responding with the only language he knew. I rushed forward and gathered them all into a hug, these kids who were supposed to be cared for, who looked like they had not had a decent meal or a bath or a moment of security in weeks. Emma smelled sour, like someone who had not had access to regular showers. Sophia's hair was matted and tangled, so dirty it looked brown instead of the light blonde it actually was. Marcus was so thin I could feel his ribs through his shirt, and he flinched when I touched him like he expected to be hurt. Daniel's diaper was soaked through, sagging heavily, and he had what looked like diaper rash covering his bottom and thighs, red and angry and probably painful. I held them all and let them cry, these children who had been holding it together for so long, because they had to, because there was no one else. I did not try to stop the tears or tell them it was okay, because it was not okay. Nothing about this was okay. I just held them and let them release months of fear and loneliness and abandonment. When the sobbing finally slowed to hiccups and sniffles, I pulled back enough to look at Emma properly. She was 12 years old, but looked simultaneously much older and much younger. Older in her eyes, which had the exhausted, haunted look of someone who had seen too much. Younger in her emaciated frame, in the way her clothes hung off her, like she was a child playing dress-up in adult clothes. Her face was drawn, with dark circles under her eyes, so pronounced they looked like bruises. Her fingernails were bitten down to the quick, some of them bloody. Her hair, which had always been long and glossy, was chopped short and uneven like she had cut it herself with dull scissors. Emma talked to me. Where are our parents? What happened? She pulled back enough to look at me, tears still streaming down her face, but her voice gaining strength as she started to tell the story she had probably been rehearsing in her head for weeks, the story she would tell when someone finally came to help. They left Joshua. Mom left first, about a month after you did. It was late April, maybe early May. She started going out at night, after we went to bed, coming home really late, or sometimes not until morning. She said she needed adult time, that she was going crazy being stuck at home with kids all day. Then one day she was packing a bag, and I asked where she was going, and she said she needed a break. She said she would be back in a few days, that she just needed some time to herself to remember who she was before she became a mother. Emma paused, hiccuping, wiping her nose on her sleeve. But she never came back. Not in a few days, not in a few weeks. She just left. No phone calls, no messages, nothing. Like we did not exist anymore. What about Dad? Where was he when this happened? He was here at first. He tried to take care of us, sort of. He went to work during the day and came home at night. But he was so angry all the time, Joshua. He would yell about how Mom abandoned us, how he never wanted this many kids anyway, how he was stuck cleaning up her mess. He would drink beer after we went to bed, sitting in the dark in the living room. Sometimes I could hear him crying. Sophia spoke up then, her voice small and frightened. Daddy scared me. He yelled so loud. I know, baby, I said, pulling her closer. I am so sorry. Emma continued, her voice getting steadier as she went on, like talking about it was helping her process what had happened. After a few weeks, Dad started going out at night too. He said he needed to clear his head. He would come back drunk, sometimes with people I did not know. One time he brought a woman home, and they were really loud, and I had to keep the kids in the bedroom so they would not see. Then he started not coming home until morning. Then he started missing whole days. When did he stop coming home completely? The last time I saw him was almost 3 weeks ago. It was a Sunday afternoon. He came home looking terrible, like he had not slept in days. There was a woman with him, someone I had never seen before. They went into his bedroom, and I could hear them arguing about money. Then Dad came out and tried to take money from my piggy bank, the one Grandma gave me before she died. It had like $40 in it, my birthday money, and some money you used to give me for helping with the kids. Emma's voice broke again. I told him no. I told him that was my money, and we needed it for food. He got so mad, Joshua. He grabbed me by my arms and shook me and said I was an ungrateful little bitch, that he gave me a roof over my head and I owed him. The woman he was with told him to leave me alone, and they started fighting, and then he just left. He said we were all better off without him anyway, that we ruined his life. That was the last time I saw him. 3 weeks ago. Emma, you have been alone with 3 little kids for 3 weeks. Almost. I thought he would come back. I kept thinking he just needed to cool off and he would come home. But days went by, and then a week, and then 2 weeks, and I realized he was not coming back. Neither of them were coming back. They just left us. I looked around at the other kids, taking in details I had been too shocked to fully process at first. Sophia was 7 years old enough to understand what was happening, but not old enough to process it in any healthy way. She sat pressed against Emma, clutching a stuffed unicorn that was filthy and missing an eye. Her eyes darted around constantly, hypervigilant, like she was watching for danger. When I moved suddenly to adjust Daniel in my lap, she flinched and raised her arms like she expected to be hit. Sophia! Honey, has someone hurt you? Did Dad hit you? She shook her head quickly, too quickly, but did not meet my eyes. Emma answered for her. Dad never hit us, but he threw things when he was angry. A glass, a plate. He threw his beer bottle once, and it shattered against the wall by Sophia's head. She has been scared of loud noises ever since. Marcus, 5 years old, had not said a word since I arrived. He just sat curled in his tight ball, rocking slightly, his eyes unfocused like he was somewhere else entirely. I had never seen him like this. He had always been shy, quiet, but he talked to family. He used to follow me around asking endless questions about everything. Now, he looked like he had retreated so far inside himself that he might never come back out. Marcus, buddy, it is me. It is Joshua. I am home now. You are safe. He did not respond, did not even acknowledge that he had heard me. Emma put a hand on his back gently. He stopped talking about 2 weeks ago, after Dad left and did not come back. He just stopped. I have tried everything, but he will not talk to me, will not talk to anyone. He barely eats. He just sits like this most of the day. And Daniel, 3 years old, was in the worst physical condition. His diaper rash was severe, probably infected, probably painful enough that sitting hurt. He was too thin, his cheeks hollow where they should have been chubby. His eyes were sunken, and his lips were chapped and cracked. When I looked more closely, I could see other signs of neglect. Cradle cap on his scalp, a runny nose that had been running so long the skin under his nose was raw, what looked like an ear infection based on the yellow discharge I could see. Emma, when was the last time Daniel saw a doctor? I do not know. Before you left, probably. Maybe February. I do not remember Mom taking him to any appointments after that. When was the last time any of them saw a doctor? I do not know, Joshua. I did not know how to take them. I do not have a car. I do not have insurance cards. I do not even know who their doctors are. I have been doing the best I can, but I do not know how to be a mom. I am 12. I should be going to school and hanging out with friends and worrying about stupid kid stuff. Instead, I have been trying to keep 3 little kids alive, and I am failing. Her voice rose to near hysteria. I am failing, Joshua. Look at them. They are dirty and hungry, and Sophia is scared all the time, and Marcus will not talk, and Daniel is sick, and I do not know what to do. I tried so hard. I fed them first, even when there was barely any food. I tried to keep the house clean, but I could not keep up. I tried to make them feel safe, but I am scared too, and they can tell. I am 12 years old, and I have been a mother to 3 kids for months, and I cannot do it anymore. I cannot. I am so tired. She collapsed against me, sobbing again, and I held her while she finally let out all the fear and responsibility and exhaustion she had been carrying. This child, who should have been worried about middle school crushes and homework, had been playing parent to toddlers, keeping them alive through sheer determination and willpower, failing by any objective standard, but somehow succeeding in the only way that mattered. They were still alive. They were traumatized and neglected and in terrible condition. But they were alive. You did so good, Emma. You did so good. You kept them safe. You kept them alive. That is all that matters. You did not fail. Mom and Dad failed. You saved them. You are the bravest person I have ever known. I was so scared. I thought about calling the police so many times, but I was afraid they would take us away and split us up. I thought if I could just hold on until you came home, it would be okay. But I did not know when you would come home, or if you would come home. You stopped calling, and I thought maybe you forgot about us or decided you did not want to deal with this family anymore. I called every week. I left messages. Mom never called me back. She probably threw her phone away when she left, or changed her number. I do not know. All I know is that we have been alone, and I did not know if anyone was coming to help us. I pulled all 4 of them close, this broken, traumatized family that was mine to protect now. I am here now. I am going to fix this. I am going to make it right. I promise you, Emma, I promise all of you, you are never going to be alone again. But even as I said the words, I had no idea how I was going to fix this. How do you fix parents who abandon their children? How do you fix 4 kids who have been traumatized and neglected? How do you fix a life you had just started building when it requires you to sacrifice everything? I spent that first evening trying to make the house livable and the kids comfortable. But every task revealed another layer of neglect and crisis. I went to the store with what money I had, taking all 4 kids, because I could not leave them alone even for an hour after what they had been through. Daniel rode in the shopping cart, Sophia and Marcus walked beside me holding the cart, and Emma pushed a second cart, her thin arms struggling with the weight. We must have looked like a disaster. 4 dirty, underfed kids, with an overwhelmed 21-year-old trying to figure out how to buy groceries for 5 people. The cashier looked at us with pity and maybe suspicion, probably wondering if she should call someone. I bought the basics: bread, peanut butter, jelly, milk, eggs, pasta, Jared sauce, frozen vegetables, chicken nuggets that the kids could eat easily. I bought diapers for Daniel, the cheapest brand they had, because I was already watching my money disappear faster than I could calculate. I bought soap and shampoo and toothbrushes and toothpaste because the bathroom was empty of anything useful for hygiene. I bought cleaning supplies because the house was a health hazard. And I bought one small luxury, a box of cookies, because the kids needed to know that someone cared enough to give them a treat. Back at the house, I made dinner. Simple pasta with Jared sauce, nothing fancy, but the kids ate like they were starving, because they probably were. Sophia put away 3 plates before slowing down. Marcus ate mechanically, not seeming to taste anything, but at least he ate. Daniel made a mess, getting more food on himself than in his mouth, but he was eating, and that was what mattered. Emma barely touched her food, pushing pasta around her plate with a fork, too anxious and overwhelmed to eat despite probably being hungrier than any of them. Emma, you need to eat. You cannot take care of them if you do not take care of yourself. I am not hungry. When was the last time you had a real meal? She thought about it, her face scrunching up in concentration. I do not know. A few days ago? Maybe longer. I kept giving most of the food to them. They needed it more. That ends now. You eat at every meal. Enough to fill you up. That is an order. She smiled weakly at my attempt to use military authority, but she picked up her fork and started eating. Small bites at first, then larger ones as her body remembered it was starving. After dinner, I tackled baths. I started with Daniel, because he was in the worst condition. The bathroom was disgusting. Grime in the tub and mildew on the shower curtain and hair clogging the drain. I cleaned the tub as best I could, then filled it with warm water and undressed Daniel. His diaper was heavy and foul-smelling. The diaper rash was worse than I had thought, covering his entire bottom and genitals, some areas bleeding where the skin had broken down. He screamed when I tried to wash him, the water stinging the raw skin, and I had to hold him while he fought me, crying and begging me to stop. Emma stood in the doorway watching, tears running down her face. I tried to change him regularly, but we ran out of diapers, and I had to make the last pack last as long as possible. I did not know it would get this bad. I did not know how to fix it. This is not your fault. This is Mom and Dad's fault. You did not do this to him. But she did not believe me. I could see it in her face. She had taken on the responsibility of caring for them, and in her mind, every injury and illness was her failure. I finally got Daniel clean, patted him dry as gently as possible, and applied diaper rash cream I had bought, a thick layer that would hopefully start healing the damaged skin. I put a clean diaper on him and dressed him in the least dirty pajamas I could find in the disaster that was the kids' room. He clung to me afterward, exhausted from crying, his little body shaking with hiccups. Sophia was next. Her hair was so matted that washing it was a nightmare. I tried to be gentle, working conditioner through the tangles, but she cried and pulled away, saying it hurt. I had to cut out some of the worst mats with scissors I found in the kitchen, chunks of hair coming away to reveal scalp that had not been properly washed in months. She had a rash on her arms that looked like eczema or some kind of allergic reaction, dry and flaky, and clearly itchy based on how she scratched at it constantly. Marcus would not get in the tub at first. He just stood in the corner shaking his head, his arms wrapped around himself. Emma coaxed him gently. Marcus, Joshua needs to give you a bath so you can be clean. It will feel good, I promise. You will feel so much better. But he would not move, would not respond. Finally, I just picked him up, fully clothed, and put him in the water. He did not fight me, but he did not participate either. He just sat there staring at nothing while I washed him, washing his hair, scrubbing dirt off his thin body, treating him like a doll, because he was so unresponsive. When I was done, I dried him off and dressed him, and he shuffled to the bedroom like a robot following programming. Emma insisted she could bathe herself, and I let her have that privacy even though I was worried about how thin she looked, how exhausted she seemed. While she was in the bathroom, I stripped the kids' beds and searched for clean sheets. There were none. Every piece of bedding in the house was filthy, so I remade the beds with the least dirty sheets I could find and made a mental note to buy new ones as soon as possible or at least get to a laundromat. I tucked the younger kids into bed, Sophia and Marcus in one bed, Daniel in a crib that was too small for him but was the only option. Sophia held her filthy unicorn and looked up at me with big scared eyes. Joshua, are you going to leave again? No, baby. I am home now. I am not going anywhere. Mommy said she would come back, and she did not. Daddy said he would come back, and he did not. How do I know you will not leave too? The question broke my heart. Because I promise, and I keep my promises. I am your big brother, and I am going to take care of you. All of you. Forever. Forever and ever. Forever and ever. She seemed satisfied with that. closing her eyes and curling around her unicorn. Marcus was already asleep, exhausted beyond his ability to stay awake. Daniel whimpered in his crib until I sang him a song I barely remembered, something our grandmother used to sing before she died, and he finally settled. Emma came out of the bathroom in cleaner, but still ragged pajamas, her wet hair hanging in her face. She looked so young and so old at the same time. I made up the couch for her with a blanket I found in a closet and told her to get some sleep, but she just stood there looking at me with an expression I could not quite read. "Joshua, what are you going to do? You just got out of basic training. You are supposed to report for more training soon. You cannot stay here and take care of us. You have a whole life ahead of you." "My life is here, with you guys." "No, your life is in the Army. You worked so hard to get out of here, to build something for yourself. I cannot let you give that up because Mom and Dad are terrible people. Emma, you are 12 years old. You cannot raise 3 kids alone. You should not have to. That was never supposed to be your job. And it is not supposed to be yours either. You are 21. You should be doing Army things and having adventures and living your life, not stuck here being a parent to your siblings." Maybe that is true, but what is the alternative? Let child services take you and split you up? Watch you go into foster care with strangers? I am not doing that. I will not. She started crying again, quietly this time, tears just rolling down her face. "I am sorry. I am so sorry you have to deal with this. This should not be your problem." I pulled her into a hug. "You have nothing to be sorry for. You did everything right. You kept them alive. You kept them together. You are a hero, Emma. And now you get to just be a kid again, because I am going to handle the adult stuff. But you are not that much older than me. You are barely an adult yourself. I am old enough, and I am all we have got, so we are going to make this work. Okay? We are going to figure it out together." She nodded against my chest, her thin body shaking with silent sobs. When she finally calmed down enough to sleep, I tucked her into the couch and went to the kitchen to assess the full disaster of my new reality. Sitting at that filthy kitchen table, I made lists. Things that needed to be done immediately. Clean the house, get the utilities current before they got shut off, find childcare for the kids, get them medical attention, report the abandonment to authorities. Things that needed to be done soon. Find a job, file for custody, deal with school enrollment for Emma. Things that needed to be figured out. How to pay rent, how to buy food, how to be a parent to 4 traumatized kids when I had no idea what I was doing. The list was overwhelming. Each item led to 10 more items. Get the kids medical attention meant finding doctors who would see them without insurance, meant paying for appointments I could not afford, meant following up on treatments and medications. Clean the house meant buying supplies I did not have money for, meant hours of labor I did not have time for while also watching for kids who could not be left alone. I had maybe $1,200 left after the grocery shopping. Rent was $800, due in 2 weeks. I had no job. I had just left the military, giving up my guaranteed paycheck and benefits. I had 4 kids depending on me, with no resources and no support system, and no idea how to make this work. But failure was not an option. Looking around that filthy kitchen at 2 in the morning, exhausted and overwhelmed and terrified, I knew that I would do whatever it took. I would work 3 jobs if I had to. I would clean that whole house with my bare hands. I would learn to be a parent through trial and error. I would sacrifice my own future without hesitation, because they were my family, because they had been abandoned by the people who were supposed to protect them, because someone had to step up, and I was the only one there. While I worked, Emma told me the full story of what had happened in the 3 months I had been gone, how our mother had started going out more, leaving Emma in charge for longer and longer periods, how she had started talking about needing a break, about how she had given up her whole life to have kids and deserved to live a little. How one day in April, she had packed a bag and left, telling Emma she would be back by the weekend. But the weekend passed, then a week, then a month with no contact. Our father had tried at first. He had gone to work, come home, made sure there was food. But he was angry, feeling abandoned and overwhelmed. He started drinking more. He started going out after the kids were in bed, coming home drunk in the early morning hours. Then he started not coming home at all, crashing with friends or whoever would have him. His last visit had been almost 3 weeks ago, when he had brought a woman Emma did not know and tried to get money from Emma's piggy bank to buy more alcohol. Emma had refused, and he had screamed at her before leaving again. He said we were all better off without him anyway, Emma said, her voice small. He said he never wanted this many kids, that we ruined his life. Then he left, and we have not seen him since. I sat there listening to my 12-year-old sister describe being abandoned by both parents, being left to care for 3 young children with no money and no support, and I felt a rage building inside me that was different from anything I had experienced in basic training. This was not the controlled aggression they taught us to use in combat. This was pure fury at people who were supposed to protect their children and had instead treated them as disposable. But rage would not help my siblings. They needed action. They needed protection. They needed someone to step up and be the parent our mother and father had failed to be. That night, after I got all the kids into clean pajamas and tucked into beds that actually had clean sheets for the first time in months, I sat on the couch and took stock of my situation. I was 21 years old. I had just graduated basic training. I had orders to report for advanced individual training in 2 weeks. I had a promising military career ahead of me that could provide stability and a future I had only dreamed about. But I also had 4 siblings who had been abandoned and were legally in a state of neglect. If I reported this to the authorities, they would go into the foster care system. They would almost certainly be separated, because finding one foster home that could take 4 kids, including a toddler, was nearly impossible. Emma would go to one home, Sophia to another, Marcus to a third. Daniel, being so young and still in diapers, would likely go to a specialized home. They would be scattered across the county, maybe the state, torn away from each other on top of being torn away from their parents. Or I could stay. I could take custody of them. I could become their guardian, their protector, their parent. But that would mean giving up the military. It would mean requesting discharge or at minimum delaying my training, probably ending my military career before it really started. It would mean giving up the future I had just earned. I thought about calling my chain of command, explaining the situation, but I knew what would happen. They would express sympathy and tell me to report it to Child Protective Services. They would tell me my siblings were not my responsibility, that I had to fulfill my service commitment. They might give me emergency leave to sort things out, but ultimately I would have to choose the military or my family. I did not sleep that night. I sat on that dirty couch in that neglected house, listening to 4 kids breathe and sleep. That was probably the first peaceful rest they had gotten in months, and I made my choice. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I found one through a free legal aid hotline who specialized in family law and custody cases. Her name was Maria Gonzalez, and when I explained the situation, she listened without judgment and then laid out my options with brutal honesty. Joshua, what happened to your siblings is child abandonment, which is a serious crime. You need to report this to Child Protective Services immediately. They will remove the children from the home and place them in emergency foster care while they investigate. What if I want to take custody of them myself? That is complicated. You are 21, which is legally old enough to be a guardian, but you would need to prove you are capable of caring for 4 children, including a toddler. You would need stable housing, stable income, and the ability to meet all their physical and emotional needs. The court would do a home study, interview you extensively, check your background, and even then, they might decide the children would be better off in the foster system or with other relatives. We do not have other relatives. My grandparents are dead. My mother has a sister in Arizona who wants nothing to do with us. My father's family is in Mexico, and we have not had contact in years. It is me or foster care. Then, you need to be prepared for a fight. The state will not make this easy. They will question whether someone your age, with no parenting experience and no established career, should have custody of 4 children. You will need to demonstrate that you can provide for them financially and emotionally. Can you do that? I thought about my military career, the guaranteed paycheck, and benefits I would be giving up. I thought about how little money I had saved, maybe $4,000 from my basic training pay. I thought about my complete lack of experience as a parent beyond helping out when I lived at home. I do not know, but I know that I love them, and I will protect them. That has to count for something. It does. But love does not pay for food and rent. You need a plan, Joshua. A real plan for how you are going to support 4 kids on your own. Over the next week, I built that plan. First, I called my commanding officer and explained the situation. He was sympathetic, but firm. I needed to report for training, or I would be considered AWOL. I requested emergency leave, which he granted for 2 weeks, but he made it clear that I needed to either report after that or process a discharge. There was no option to pause my military career while I sorted out family issues. I chose discharge. I requested a hardship discharge based on family circumstances, submitting documentation about my siblings' abandonment and my need to care for them. The Army processed it faster than I expected, probably because I had not yet started my specialized training and they had not invested much in me beyond basic. Within a week, I was no longer a soldier. I had my honorable discharge papers and the understanding that I had just given up guaranteed employment, health insurance, education benefits, and a career path that could have taken me out of poverty. But I had my siblings. That was what mattered. Next, I filed a police report about my parents' abandonment. The police took statements from Emma and from me, photographed the condition of the house, documented the neglect. They issued warrants for both my parents for child abandonment and endangerment. I provided the officer with every phone number and address I had for them, though I doubted they would be found anytime soon. People who abandon their children typically do not want to be found. Then came Child Protective Services. A caseworker named Patricia Ruiz came to the house 2 days after I filed the police report. She was in her 50s, tired looking, with the air of someone who had seen too many sad situations. She interviewed me and Emma separately, examined the house, checked the younger kids for signs of abuse or serious neglect. She took photographs and made notes on a tablet, her expression neutral, but her eyes sad. "Joshua, I appreciate what you are trying to do here," she said after her inspection. "But this house is not safe for children. There are health and safety code violations. The utilities are at risk of being shut off due to unpaid bills, and you have no legal custody of these children. I am going to have to place them in emergency foster care while we sort this out." "No." The word came out harder than I intended. "No, you are not taking them. I am their brother. I can take care of them. You are 21 years old with no job and no established means of support. You just left the military. You have no parenting experience. These children need immediate care that you cannot provide. I can provide it. I will get a job. I will make this house safe. I will do whatever it takes. But you are not splitting them up and putting them with strangers. They have been through enough." Emma, who had been sitting quietly during the inspection, spoke up. "Please do not take us away from Joshua. He is the only one who has ever really taken care of us. We will do better. The house will be cleaner. We will be good. Just please do not separate us." Patricia looked at Emma, then at the younger kids, who were clinging to me like I was the only solid thing in their world, and I saw her waver. She was bound by rules and procedures, but she was also human, someone who could see that splitting up these kids would cause more trauma on top of what they had already endured. "I am going to give you 2 weeks," she finally said. 2 weeks to demonstrate that you can provide a safe, stable environment. You need to get this house up to code. You need to show proof of income or savings sufficient to support 4 children. You need to start the formal process to petition for guardianship. If you cannot do those things, I will remove the children and place them in foster care. Do you understand? I understand. 2 weeks. I will make it work. After she left, I sat down with Emma and we made a list of everything that needed to be done. Clean the entire house top to bottom. Fix the broken window. Deal with the pest problem I had discovered in the kitchen. Pay the overdue utility bills before they got shut off. Find childcare for the younger kids so Emma could go back to school when the new year started. Find a job that would support all of us. File for guardianship with the family court. Get the kids proper medical care and documentation. The list was overwhelming, but I had 2 weeks to accomplish it or lose my siblings forever. I attacked it with military discipline. I woke up at 5 every morning and worked until midnight. I used most of my savings to pay the overdue utilities, leaving just enough for food and immediate repairs. I spent 3 days deep cleaning the house, scrubbing floors and walls, and washing everything that could be washed. I fixed the broken window myself, using materials from a hardware store and YouTube tutorials. I called an exterminator about the cockroach problem and used the last of my savings to pay for treatment. I applied for every job I could find that would hire someone with only a high school diploma and basic training. Warehouse work, retail, construction, anything. I got hired at a big box store for $14 an hour, which was not nearly enough to support 5 people, but was better than nothing. I applied for food assistance and temporary cash aid, swallowing my pride, because my siblings needed to eat more than I needed to feel independent. I took the kids to a community health clinic for checkups, using my limited funds to pay the sliding scale fees. Sophia's rash was a fungal infection that needed cream. Marcus was anemic and needed iron supplements. Daniel was behind on his vaccinations and needed several shots to catch up. Emma was severely underweight from months of giving most of the food to her younger siblings. The doctor at the clinic looked at their records and then looked at me and said simply, "These children have been neglected. Whatever you are doing now to care for them, keep doing it. They need stability and consistency." The hardest part was not the physical labor or the financial stress, though those were crushing. The hardest part was the emotional labor of being parent to 4 deeply traumatized children who all manifested their pain in different, difficult ways. Marcus's selective mutism was the most heartbreaking because I could see him wanting to communicate, but being unable to do so. He would open his mouth like he was going to speak, and then nothing would come out, and he would close his mouth and look down at his feet in what seemed like shame. I tried everything to get him to talk. I asked simple yes or no questions he could nod to. I gave him paper and crayons to draw his feelings. I sat with him in comfortable silence, hoping he would eventually feel safe enough to speak. Nothing worked. The therapist we eventually saw said it was a trauma response, his brain shutting down verbal communication as a way to protect himself from further pain. She said it might take months or years before he felt safe enough to talk again. She said I should keep talking to him normally, keep including him in conversations, keep giving him opportunities to respond without pressure. So I did. I narrated everything I was doing. I am making breakfast now. Do you want eggs or cereal? I will make both, and you can point to which one you want. We are going to the park. Do you want to bring your ball? Nod if yes. Time for bed. Do you want me to read you a story? This book or that book? Marcus would respond with nods or shakes of his head, sometimes with pointing, but never with words. And every day that silence continued felt like a failure on my part, like I was not doing enough to make him feel safe. There was one incident about 2 weeks after I came home that showed me just how deep Marcus's trauma went. I was cooking dinner in the kitchen, all 4 kids in the living room watching a movie I had rented. I dropped a pot, a loud metallic crash as it hit the kitchen floor. From the living room, I heard Sophia scream, and then Marcus's voice, the first words he had spoken in weeks, shouting, "No, please no. I am sorry. I will be good." I ran to the living room to find Marcus curled in a ball in the corner, his hands over his head, sobbing and repeating, I am sorry over and over. Emma was trying to comfort him, telling him it was okay. Nobody was mad, but he was completely in the grip of a flashback or panic attack, reliving something from the months of neglect and chaos. I sat on the floor next to him, not touching him because he seemed too frightened for physical contact, and spoke in the calmest voice I could manage despite my own racing heart. Marcus, it is Joshua. You are safe. Nobody is hurt. I just dropped a pot. That is all. You did not do anything wrong. You are safe here. It took 20 minutes before he calmed down enough to uncurl from his defensive position. When he finally looked at me, his eyes were red and swollen and full of fear that no 5-year-old should ever feel. He did not speak again after that incident, retreating back into his protective silence. But I had learned that loud noises were a trigger, that whatever he had witnessed or experienced during those months of abandonment had left him expecting violence. After that, I moved through the house quietly. I never raised my voice, never slammed doors, never dropped things if I could help it. I warned the kids before I used loud appliances like the vacuum or blender. I created an environment of calm and quiet because Marcus needed that to feel safe, and what Marcus needed, he got. Sophia's aggression was different, but equally challenging. She had always been an energetic kid, but now that energy had a violent edge. When she got frustrated, which was often, she would hit, not playfully, but with real force behind it, usually targeting Emma or Marcus because they were smaller and would not hit back. When she got angry, she would bite, her teeth leaving marks on Emma's arms that took days to fade. The first time she bit me, about a week after I got home, I was trying to get her to clean up her toys before dinner. She refused, crossing her arms and glaring at me with defiance. I stayed calm, explaining that everyone had to help keep the house clean, that it was a family rule. She responded by grabbing my arm and biting down hard enough to break skin. The pain was sharp and shocking. My instinct was to yell, to pull away forcefully, but I forced myself to stay calm. I gently but firmly removed her teeth from my arm and held her at arm's length while she kicked and screamed. Sophia, we do not bite. Biting hurts people. You hurt me. That is not okay. I do not care. I hate you. I hate everyone. I wish you never came back. The words hurt more than the bite, but I knew she did not mean them. She was 7 years old working through abandonment and trauma, and anger was easier to express than fear or sadness. I held her until she exhausted herself fighting, until she collapsed into tears, and then I held her gently while she cried and apologized over and over. I am sorry, Joshua. I am so sorry. I did not mean it. Please do not leave. Please do not go away like Mommy and Daddy. I am not going anywhere. You can bite me and hit me and say mean things, and I will still be here. That is what family means. I am here forever, no matter what. After that incident, I worked with her therapist, to develop strategies for managing her aggression. We created a calm-down corner with soft pillows and stuffed animals where she could go when she felt angry. We practiced deep breathing and counting to 10. We talked about using words instead of hitting or biting. It helped, but the progress was slow. For months, I had bruises from where she had hit or bitten me in moments of frustration. Daniel's attachment issues were perhaps the most demanding because they required my constant physical presence. He could not be more than a few feet from me without having a complete meltdown. If I left the room, even to use the bathroom, he would scream with a terror that suggested he thought I was abandoning him permanently. If I put him down, he would cry and reach for me, his little face crumpling with distress. I learned to do everything one-handed because I was always holding Daniel. I cooked with him on my hip, stirring pasta with one hand while he clutched my shirt with both of his. I cleaned with him strapped to my back in a carrier I bought from a thrift store. I slept with him next to me because putting him in his crib resulted in hours of crying that woke the whole house and left him exhausted and me feeling like the worst guardian in the world. The pediatrician we saw said the attachment issues were severe, a result of months of inconsistent care and abandonment. She said Daniel did not trust that caregivers would come back once they left, so he clung desperately to the one person who was showing up consistently. She said it would get better with time and consistency, but that I needed to be patient and to gradually work on helping him feel secure enough to be apart from me for short periods. So I created rituals. Daniel, I am going to the kitchen to get a glass of water. I will be right back. You can see me from here. And I would go to the kitchen slowly, narrating my actions, letting him see that I was coming back. Daniel, I am going to the bathroom. Emma is here with you. I will be back in 2 minutes. Count with me, 1, 2. And I would go quickly, leaving the door open, so he could hear my voice, coming back to scoop him up and praise him for being brave. It was exhausting. My back ached from carrying him constantly. My arms were sore. I could not do simple tasks without planning around his need to be touching me. But slowly, so slowly, he started to trust. First, he could tolerate me being in the next room if he could see me. Then he could stay with Emma for 5 minutes while I showered. Then 10 minutes while I did laundry. It was tiny progress, but it was progress. And Emma, my brave, broken Emma, had panic attacks that came out of nowhere and left her gasping and sobbing. The first one happened about a week after I got home. We were at the grocery store, a routine trip to buy food for the week. I was pushing the cart with Daniel in the seat. Emma was walking beside me, and Sophia and Marcus were trailing behind looking at the colorful packages. Everything was fine until we turned down the pasta aisle, and Emma suddenly stopped walking. Her breathing got fast and shallow. Her hands started shaking. She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes and said in a strangled voice, "Joshua, I cannot breathe. Something is wrong. I cannot breathe." I recognized a panic attack from training I had received in the military about combat stress reactions. I quickly guided her to the end of the aisle away from other shoppers, had her sit on the floor with her back against the shelves, and coached her through slow breathing. In through your nose. Hold for 4 seconds. Out through your mouth. Good. Again. You are okay. You are safe. This is just panic. It will pass. It took 10 minutes before she could breathe normally again, before her hands stopped shaking. The other kids clustered around her, scared by seeing their big sister fall apart. Other shoppers looked at us with concern or annoyance at the disruption. I did not care. I just focused on Emma until she could stand up again. "I am sorry," she said, her voice small and ashamed. "I do not know what happened. I just suddenly felt like something terrible was going to happen, and I could not breathe. You do not need to apologize. You had a panic attack. It is a normal response to trauma. You are going to be okay. But she had more attacks over the following weeks. They were triggered by seemingly random things. Seeing a beer bottle in someone's yard, hearing an argument from a neighboring apartment, going to bed at night, and thinking about all the nights she had stayed awake, worried about how to feed her siblings. Each attack left her exhausted and scared, afraid of when the next one would come. Her therapist taught her grounding techniques and gave her medication to help with the anxiety, but the attacks continued for months. I learned to recognize the signs before they fully hit. The way her breathing would change, the way her eyes would get that wide, scared look. I learned to intervene early, to talk her through it, to remind her that she was safe now, that she did not have to carry everything alone anymore. All of this emotional labor, all of this parenting of traumatized children, was happening while I was also trying to work, pay bills, keep the house clean, make sure everyone ate and bathed and got to their various appointments. I was learning to be a parent through the hardest possible circumstances, with kids who needed more than I knew how to give, and I was doing it all at 21 years old with no training and no support system beyond overworked social workers and underfunded therapists. There were nights I would get all 4 kids to bed, collapse on the couch, and cry from pure exhaustion and overwhelm. There were days I wanted to call someone, anyone, and ask for help, but there was no one to call. There were moments I regretted coming home, regretted giving up my military career, regretted the path my life had taken. But those moments passed quickly, because when I looked at my siblings, I knew I had made the only choice I could live with. I found a free counseling center that worked with traumatized children and enrolled all of them in therapy. I sat in the waiting room while they had sessions with patient-caring therapists who specialized in abandonment and neglect. I went to parenting classes at the community center, learning how to handle tantrums and bedtime routines, and the 1,000 small things that parents are supposed to know instinctively, but that I had to learn from scratch. 2 weeks after Patricia's visit, she came back for another inspection. The house was clean and safe. The utilities were paid. I had proof of employment and documentation of the benefits we were receiving. I had enrolled Emma back in school starting in the fall. I had medical records showing the younger kids were receiving proper care. I had letters from the therapist stating that the children were bonded to me and that separating them would cause additional trauma. Patricia walked through the house taking notes, checking closets and cupboards, asking the kids questions. She spent an hour reviewing all my documentation. Finally, she sat down with me at the kitchen table. "Joshua, I am impressed. You have done more in 2 weeks than most people do in 2 months. The house is safe. The children are clearly bonded to you and thriving under your care. Your plan for supporting them financially is tight, but workable. I am going to recommend to the court that you be granted temporary guardianship while the investigation into your parents continues." "Thank you. Thank you so much. But understand, this is temporary. You will need to petition for permanent guardianship, which means a longer process, more interviews, more home studies. The court will want to be sure you can handle this long term, not just in a crisis. And Joshua, this is going to be hard. You are 21 years old, taking on the responsibility of 4 children. You will miss out on things people your age normally do. You will struggle financially. You will be exhausted constantly. Are you sure this is what you want?" I looked around the kitchen at my siblings. Emma was helping Sophia with a coloring book at the table. Marcus was playing with blocks on the floor, making the first sounds I had heard from him in days. Daniel was napping in a playpen I had bought secondhand, peaceful and safe. They were not perfect kids. They were traumatized and struggling and needed so much more than I knew how to give. But they were mine. They were my responsibility. And I would die before I let them down the way our parents had. I am sure. They are my family. I will do whatever it takes. The temporary guardianship was granted 3 days later. I became the legal guardian of 4 children ranging in age from 3 to 12. I was responsible for their food, shelter, education, medical care, emotional well-being, and futures. At 21, I went from being a soldier with no attachments to being a single parent of 4. The transition was brutal. The novelty of having me home wore off quickly for the kids, and the reality of their trauma started manifesting in difficult behaviors. Emma developed obsessive-compulsive tendencies, needing everything to be clean and organized as a way to feel control. Sophia became aggressive, hitting and biting when she was frustrated. Marcus retreated further into himself, sometimes going whole days without speaking. Daniel regressed in his toilet training and started having accidents constantly. I worked my retail job 40 hours a week, coming home exhausted to cook dinner, help with homework, break up fights, comfort crying kids, clean up messes, give baths, read stories, enforce bedtime routines. I slept maybe 4 hours a night. I lost weight because I was eating whatever the kids left on their plates and not buying enough food for myself. I went months without seeing friends or having any time to myself because there was always something that needed to be done. Money was a constant source of stress. My retail paycheck was $1,100 every 2 weeks after taxes. The rent was $800 a month. Utilities were another $200. Food for 5 people cost at least $400 a month, even with food stamps. Then there were clothes for growing kids, school supplies, copays for therapy and medical appointments, transportation costs. I was constantly behind on bills, constantly choosing between paying rent on time or buying Daniel new shoes because he had outgrown his old ones. There were moments when I regretted giving up the military. Late at night, when the kids were finally asleep and I was paying bills at the kitchen table, I would think about the steady paycheck I had walked away from, the career advancement I would never have, the education benefits I had forfeited. I would think about my friends from basic training, who were moving on to specialized training, who would deploy overseas, who would have adventures and experiences I would never have, because I was stuck making packed lunches and scheduling pediatrician appointments. But then I would remember what I had come home to. A 12-year-old trying to raise toddlers. Kids who were filthy and hungry and scared. Children who had been abandoned by the people who were supposed to love them most. And I would remember that I had saved them from that. I had given up my future, but I had given them a future. That had to be enough. The permanent guardianship hearing took place 4 months later, in October. My parents had been located by then. My mother was living with a boyfriend in Nevada, working at a casino, and apparently doing fine without her children. My father was in jail in Los Angeles for a DUI. Both had been served with notices about the hearing, and both had declined to contest my petition for guardianship. They signed away their parental rights without even requesting visitation, abandoning their children legally as they had already done emotionally. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Angela Morrison. She reviewed all the case files, read letters from the therapists and teachers, looked at Patricia's reports. Then she called me to the stand to ask questions. Mr. Martinez, you are 21 years old. Why do you believe you should have permanent custody of 4 children? Because they are my siblings, Your Honor. Because they have already lost their parents, and I will not let them lose each other. Because I love them, and I will work myself to death before I let them go without. You gave up a military career to care for them. Do you have any regrets about that decision? I thought about how to answer honestly. Yes, Your Honor. Sometimes I regret it. I had a path to a better life, and I walked away from it. But I would make the same choice again, because they matter more than any career I could have had. The financial records show you are barely making ends meet. How do you plan to provide for these children long term? I am working full-time and receiving assistance. I am looking for better employment. I will go back to school online, if I can manage it, get training for a job that pays more. I will do whatever it takes. We are not rich, but we have enough. They have a home. They have food. They have someone who loves them. That is more than they had before. Mr. Martinez, these children have been through significant trauma. Are you equipped to handle their emotional and psychological needs? No, Your Honor, not on my own. But they're all in therapy. I am learning as I go. I make mistakes. But I show up every single day, and I will keep showing up. That is what parents do. Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment, reviewing papers on her bench. Then she looked up at me. I have seen many custody cases in my career, Mr. Martinez. I have seen people fight for children out of spite, or money, or obligation. But I can see that you are doing this out of love and a deep sense of responsibility. The reports show that these children have thrived under your care. They are healthier, safer, and more stable than they have been in years. It is my ruling that you will be granted permanent legal guardianship of Emma Martinez, Sophia Martinez, Marcus Martinez, and Daniel Martinez. May God help you, young man, because you have taken on a tremendous responsibility. I walked out of that courthouse with 4 kids who were legally mine to raise. Emma held my hand so tightly I thought she would break my fingers. Sophia and Marcus walked on either side of us, and I carried Daniel on my hip. We were a family, officially and permanently. Not the family I had imagined having at 21, but the family I had, the family I chose, the family I would protect with everything I had. That was 3 years ago. I am 24 now. Emma is 15, doing well in high school despite everything she went through. Sophia is 10, still energetic and creative, doing much better with her aggression now that she feels secure. Marcus is 8 and has started talking more, slowly coming out of his shell. Daniel is 6, in kindergarten, with no memory of the abandonment that nearly destroyed him. We are still struggling financially. I never went back to school like I planned. I work 2 jobs now, the retail job during the day and weekend security shifts at night. I sleep when I can. I have no dating life, no social life beyond the other parents at school events. I have given up most of what people my age are supposed to experience because my siblings need me, but we are making it. We live in a better neighborhood now, a 2-bedroom apartment that is small but clean and safe. The kids are thriving in school. They see their therapists regularly. They have friends, activities, normal childhood experiences. They know they are loved and protected. They know that no matter what, I will be there. Sometimes people ask me if I regret giving up the military, if I wonder what my life would have been like if I had not come home that day. The honest answer is yes. Sometimes I do wonder. I wonder where I would be stationed, what rank I would have achieved, what I would have seen and done. I wonder if I would have gone to college on the GI Bill, if I would have built a career that paid well and had stability. But then I look at my siblings and I know I made the right choice. Because if I had not come home, Emma would have kept trying to raise 3 kids alone until the authorities finally noticed and ripped them apart. Marcus would be in a different home, probably still not speaking, still traumatized. Sophia would be somewhere else, acting out her pain on strangers. Daniel would be with yet another family, the baby nobody wanted to take on, and they would all be without each other, without the sibling bonds that are sometimes the only family that matters. I gave them stability when the world was chaos. I gave them love when they had been abandoned. I gave them a future when it looked like they had none. And yes, it cost me my own future in the process. But that is what family means. That is what sacrifice means. That is what it means to be an adult who steps up when the adults before you have failed. My parents are still out there somewhere, living their lives free of the responsibilities they created. My mother calls sometimes, usually drunk, asking to talk to the kids. I do not let her. You do not get to abandon your children and then pop back in when it is convenient. My father is out of jail now, working somewhere in Northern California. He has never tried to contact us. I hope he never does. I am raising 4 kids at 24 because 2 people decided their freedom was more important than their children. I became a parent when I was barely an adult myself because the people who were supposed to be parents walked away. That should never have been my burden. But I picked it up anyway because the alternative was watching my siblings suffer. I am Joshua Martinez. I am 24 years old. I am a high school graduate working 2 low-wage jobs to support 4 kids in a small apartment in Riverside, California. I am not who I thought I would be at this age. I gave up my military career, my education, my youth, and any chance at a normal life for someone my age. But I am also the person who saved 4 children from a broken system. The person who proved that family is not about biology, but about who shows up when things are hard. The person who learned that being an adult sometimes means sacrificing everything you wanted for what someone else needs. This is my story, and it is the story of everyone who has ever had to grow up too fast, take on burdens too heavy, and make choices too hard, because the people who were supposed to be responsible simply were not. Sometimes becoming an adult does not happen at 18 or 21. Sometimes it happens the moment you walk through a door and realize that if you do not act, if you do not take responsibility, children will suffer. And once you see that, once you understand the stakes, there is no going back to who you were before. Thank you for listening to my story of growing up faster than I ever wanted to. I have left 2 more stories on your screen, both from young men who learned that sometimes becoming an adult does not happen at 18. It happens the moment your family needs you to be strong. Click on whichever one speaks to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it is like to be forced to grow up overnight, that notification bell is waiting. Until tomorrow, remember, age is just a number, but courage defines who you really are.